Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What is up, guys? Welcome to First Cut. I am Andres.
This is RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
And this is our review of Devs. We're going to talk about the finale first of all, but we're also going to get a little bit into the season as well. And I am very excited because I have notoriously been talking about this show since the first trailer. And I've been like begging people to watch it on my Twitter. I've been saying, watch this show. I feel like the mascot for the show. They should just hire me at this point.
They really should.
They kind of should. I'm not even lying about that. Like, shout out to FX. Like, hire me, guys. But either way, this is a show that hits all the right notes for me personally, as far as all my interest in technology, Silicon Valley, sci-fi, quantum supremacy, just all these kind of terms and philosophies and theories that I kind of enjoy on my leisure time, which is, I know, very weird, but it kind of hit all the right notes for me personally. But I'm excited to have you guys both, because you guys have a different perspective than me, to talk about it. Immediately, I'm going straight to the finale, guys. So I want to hear your genuine thoughts as far as what'd you think of the finale? Did it live up to the hype? And how did you feel about how things turned out? And I'm going to go straight to you, Sabrina.
Yeah. So when I was watching this, I binge watched it, which I'm not super happy that I had to do that. But, you know, I watched it in one day. I wish I started when you did, Andres, and I watched it week by week and really took in every single episode. Because by the time I got to the end, since I breezed through it, like the hype was there still, but I just know that if I went every single week, it would have grown so much more. But I think this entire series and the end especially, like, I think it's the last episode, or it might be the second to last episode, where we find out Devs, it's actually Deus, which means God. Was it the last episode? Yeah. Perfect. So, which means God, and it's crazy because like the whole Deus ex machina, which is like God versus machine and everything like that. It's interesting because this perfectly complements a film like Ex Machina, which we talked a lot about in The Meaning of Alex Garland. We said all of our thoughts on that film, but this series also it really dives into the themes of like human existence and like playing God and all the symbolism happening. So what the entire series built up at this finale, with all the monologues from Nick Offerman, who did absolutely incredible. I am blown away by his performance. So many in the series, but especially his. So much symbolism in all of the shots. I love the way they wrapped everything up so perfectly. I hesitate to say a perfect series because that's something that's so hard to accomplish because it is so many episodes. Not so many in this case, but like a series rather than a movie. But Alex Garland really did that, and he was so meticulous, and he was so smart with the way he did everything. So I was blown away.
RB3.
Yeah, no. Like we talked about when we talked in the Alex Garland episode, we clipped it out for our Devs, review up until that point. At that point, we're at episode 5, and at that point, the show was kind of touching lightly on themes of like predetermination and multi-universe theory and all that kind of stuff. And I thought it was going to head towards more of a direction that talked more about multi-universe and more about like the differentiations of it. And the show does present that kind of theme stylistically through some like really interesting visuals throughout, like when it shows, multiple different versions of the same event happening like within the same shot. I always thought that was one of the coolest devices that the show used. At the end, it does end up becoming more about simulations and predeterminations and calculations and how predictions align with this idea of like this religious context that the show keeps alluding towards. And I think it handled all of that stuff really well. I did enjoy the finale. The finale aired Wednesday on FX. And I enjoyed seeing the way they're going to wrap up the story, because honestly, I didn't know. It obviously did end with a choice, but then it ended with another choice that seemingly canceled out the first choice and, you know, preemptively made this like cycle of predetermination kind of valid, just in a different way. So it does kind of show how it does kind of just show in general that, like, you know, the mind of Alex Garland, like his kind of philosophy presents more of like a nihilistic perspective on the idea of like nostalgia and how that kind of overly being stuck inside of your own head could be translated directly into what ends up happening in the series, and the fact that Lily and Forrest end up becoming literally a part of the simulation, literally become inside of the brain. It literally becomes inside of its own mind, trapped inside of this computer that's inescapable. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm scared, guys, because I'm about to get into it. I pulled up my notes while you guys were talking, and I was listening, obviously, and I looked at my notes, and I was like, "Oh no, I'm not gonna get through all this." But I love the idea of what you said, RB3. The fact that all the religious just metaphors and iconography and aesthetic that the show uses is really interesting for sure. The fact that the moment in time they keep choosing to see inside devs or deus is Christ on the cross. Like the fact that they pay so much attention to Judeo-Christian beliefs and Judeo-Christian history throughout the show, and the fact
even to the point where when Lily dies, she kind of makes like this kind of cross, like
she's literally Jesus on the cross, to the point that the fact that I have a religious studies background, I know you guys don't know that, but I do. I'm very, very, very familiar with the Bible, so I have a lot of thoughts. But yeah, you're right, RB3. Determinism. This show is make or break by determinism. If that theory, if that philosophy isn't kind of beaten into your brain by the end of the show, then I don't know what to tell you. And the fact that, yes, we find out in the show, determinism is real. Like you said, RB3, she did make a choice. However, the fact that they both died still kind of, fulfilled the prophecy, so to say, of them both dying, sparking an event that happens that sets the machine ablaze and kind of almost breaks the machine and turns it into something it wasn't, which is a simulation that their consciousness can now live in. So determinism is real. However, that choice is an anomaly. And the fact that Lily represents that anomaly, almost like what, RB3? Almost like Neo. This is exactly what the Matrix is. Represents the anomaly of the one. The ability to choose is what makes Neo Neo. It's what makes him the one. And he is allowed to now wake up his species, which is humanity, inside the Matrix. So I thought it was incredible how, like, now Lily is the one. She is the Neo, and her ability now is to live inside the simulation, but she has the choice to wake anyone else up inside the simulation and let them know. That's why they had that shot at the end with Forrest telling her that no one else knows, and she kind of almost hesitates. She's like, "Oh, they don't know." Like she has the choice. If she wants to wake them up, she can. She can let them know that they live in a simulation and that there is a God, and the God happens to be this machine that they're living in. And that's why I thought it was interesting, the fact that they chose Deus, God, that there is a God, right? That's what the show is essentially taking you towards. But the fact that God is, it's not, this guy in a gray beard with the sky in the sky. It's coding. It's DNA. It's everything that humanity has lived with for the past millions of years. And the fact that our coding and our universe guides us to do the same actions over and over again, that is God. And the fact that the computer was able to deliver that same information is I find to be fascinating, almost on a real scale, if I'm being real with you guys. Just the idea of us being inside this universe where humanity is kind of cursed with the predetermined fact that we are continuing to repeat the same mistakes from the past. I don't know. What do you guys think about that idea and the idea of determinism itself, Sabrina?
It's really crazy. It's a really crazy idea. It's a crazy concept, but it makes a lot of sense. And the way it's portrayed in devs, like it's believable. And the way it fits into this self-contained narrative that I think is as close to flawless as you could possibly tell this kind of story, what Alex Garland did. Yeah, it's just a lot. This was really existential, very heavy for a whole quarantine thing. I was in a mood for a day. I was in a whole mood. Yeah, but it is extremely interesting. It's incredibly thought-provoking, but of course I wouldn't expect anything less from Alex Garland.
RB3.
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree. I definitely thought the notion of determinism was one of the most prominent themes. I think it is kind of a sad interpretation that this show kind of has. It is almost like a nihilistic, meaningless. Like, what's because ultimately at the root of it, determinism is more of a nihilistic thought of like the idea of like there's no free will, there's no self-control. Everybody's just cogs in the machine. Everybody's just kind of going with the flow and with a predetermined destiny. And the show emphasizes that heavily to the point, like all the way, and just kind of drives it down to the end. And then it also gives a lot of, in the show in episode 7, before Jamie, R.I.P. Jamie, one of my favorite characters in this show. Before Jamie dies, yeah, exactly. Before Jamie dies, he says that a lot of these tech geniuses are so egomaniacal because they think they're the Messiah. They think they're like this like godlike figure. And the show at the end of the day does kind of put the idea to the forefront of like this like resurrection through a simulation, like through in the same way that like the Matrix, and again, it's like we talked about in the Matrix episode how much the show is so similar to the Matrix. Like the Matrix is literally exactly about that, like how we are built inside of a simulation because of how predetermined our lifestyles is. We're all kind of running on this program to begin with. So I think that's just really it's fascinating. I think it comes down to the idea of like religion in and of itself, like how much free will is in religion in and of itself too. Like what kind of choices are we allowed to make? Are we supposed to follow these rules? Are we supposed to follow this programming? And in and of it, so it kind of conflates the technology and the religious aspects to both ends, and it does a really good job at it. And it emphasizes theme really well about being, we talked about the criticisms of the Matrix being it was so exposition heavy, a lot of dialogue, a lot of monologues, and the show has a few monologues, but honestly, it does most of its storytelling visually and through just showing you the characters and like their decisions and how or lack thereof of decisions. And I think that just what makes the series above and beyond for me.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Like, apparently this was controversial too, everything you said, RB3. The fact that we have this tech giant Messiah who kind of does fulfill his own prophecy and does become the Messiah. That is kind of controversial within itself. The fact that the show decided to go that route. I know a lot. I read some articles that people didn't like that. I thought that was interesting, but then all the biblical metaphors were kind of slammed in my head in the finale. And immediately oh my God, I'm catching things now that I didn't catch before because they're literally telling me about what Lily is. I mean, literally, she hands her hands like she's on a cross, representing the anomaly, the break in the Matrix. And I immediately started to think, like, wait a minute, is this show saying that Jesus was another anomaly? Like he was a break in the Matrix in real life. And that's why they kept going back. And Lily wasn't the first, like Jesus was before that. And the fact that he made a choice and he had a predetermined prophetic vision of dying. And the fact that his death sparked the modern world we know today. I mean, you can't deny that. The fact that we live in a world of after Christ. And the fact that his anomaly, his choice to live out his life and to go against the grain and to go against society, because that's what Jesus was. Like, if people who read up on who Jesus actually was, that's what he was. He was someone who would speak against the racism, the atrocities, the poverty, the destruction that was going around his world by the Romans, because that's what was controlling the Jews at that point. And the fact that, what if Jesus was that anomaly, and his choices kind of broke the universe almost, because the universe was predetermined and determinism is real, and he was able to break it, and he knew that he had to die in order to do that. And I was just like, my brain was exploding. I was like, wait a minute, is that what the show is saying? And Lily is like this new Jesus, but instead of humanity, it's a simulation of humanity. And she's able to kind of spread the message of hope to whoever's inside that sin. Because let's face it, we've seen Westworld, RB3. Like, what's the difference, right? They're alive too. So their life matters just as much as human life. And now Lily has that ability to wake them up, to pull them out of the matrix and to pull them out of the simulation on a conscious level, in consciousness. And the fact that the show decided to do that got me thinking, oh, Forrest knew he had to die in order for that to happen. So he's like the new Jesus, because the knowledge Christ had of his death is what made him Christ. Like, if you know the Bible, he knew he had to die. And he even says it, knowledge is our cross to bear. He says it to Lily at the end. And that's that knowledge of what came before is their new cross that they have to bear. I don't know. I know I'm scaring you guys right now, but it kind of blew my mind, because I was like, oh my God, wait a minute. We live inside this universal setting of predeterminism, and you're telling me that maybe Jesus was that. He was that anomaly in real life. And I was like, mind blown. I don't know what you guys think of that whole religious aspect and Christ aspect.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it. I don't know too much. So it is really cool to hear different, like, everything you said. Like, it's very, very fascinating, and it's something to, like, this can kind of spark somebody to maybe dive deeper into something like that. And it's really, really cool. And the thing is, like yeah, exactly. And as Alex Garland does, of course, this is that, like, very, like, grounded sci-fi, believable type of story. And he did, again, I think RB3 said it, visual storytelling with even just the aesthetics, like how like smart his writing was, and then how, like, crisp and clean all the aesthetics were. It's one of those things that I think, again, as I said, Ex Machina and this type of series, if you enjoy Ex Machina, I think this is another thing that you will enjoy from Alex Garland, which I think is so cool. Like, if he's just hitting it out of the ballpark with all these crazy ideas, crazy concepts that, like, and he makes it easy to, like, understand. It's thought provoking and you think, but it's not so out of the realm that people can't also enjoy it at the same time.
RB3, before I go to you, yeah, everything Sabrina said, the fact that we said it in our Alex Garland episode. If you guys haven't checked that out, go check that out, where I say that Alex Garland is so good at using visuals and score. Like, I really want to emphasize the combination of both, the visuals and the score, to tell a story that's even more impactful than maybe dialogue could be. So I think that's a lot of credit to him.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think he didn't, I think this is probably my favorite of his, kind of short directorial filmography, because I do feel like he had a lot more time to explore a lot of different things that are just, like, a lot deeper, a lot more interesting, without, like, the confines of having, like, a singular movie and kind of sticking to, like, the same kind of ideas that that movie conventional sci-fi would have to stick to. And I think it does a really good job of, like you said, Sabrina, communicating a lot of those themes to, like, both a general, just more generalized watchers, and to somebody like us three who are just, like, super freaky geeky people. So talking about the religious aspects of it, I think the show does present, like, kind of a cynical approach to a religious take too. Like, it does have, like, a more of a negative extrapolation of it, presenting, like, the idea of like rebirth and like and resurrection and more of like a negative light and more of a selfish light. Like Nick Offerman's whole character motivation throughout the whole show is to bring back his mother and daughter. There's no real way to do that, particularly in the series. It's just it's just that's just part of what his character, that's just what his character wants. It's not for any like sort of greater cause. And then you see at the end that Katie, who's played by Allison Pill, she's bringing this technology to the senator, almost like in the means to like try and sell it, like, and one can wonder, if not sell it, at least keep it under wraps. But one can wonder, and speaking on something like The Matrix, where there is like this generalized control, I think about another movie that also emphasizes control and determinism really heavily too, is Minority Report with Tom Cruise, directed by Steven Spielberg. I think those movies and this show kind of all play to the idea of like, yeah, if our choices are kind of locked in stone, if we're all making this prediction or making these or involving ourselves in this like kind of like simulation kind of realm, is the easier route to just live your life and with ignorant bliss, other than suffering the harsh realities of life itself. Is a character like Lily or a character like Forrest going to truly be happy knowing that they're not in like the actual reality they were born in, that they're just living in a simulation?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it is criticizing it. I think it's more presenting it, if anything else. Like I said before, the fact that Forrest almost got away with everything he did and he got what he wanted in the end. That's interesting that they decided to go that route. I don't think Katie was selling it. I think she was just presenting it as something that's real, and that she wants him to live a happy ever after inside the simulation. I mean, obviously, we've seen this before. San Junipero won, I think, an Emmy or an Oscar. An Emmy.
My favorite episode.
Right, but that's what it's all about. It's about uploading your consciousness into the afterlife, and that's the afterlife. That's heaven, right? What if heaven isn't, what heaven is in the Bible, but heaven is a simulation, an ability to escape from this reality after you've lived your own life. And the fact that Forrest was the one who kind of Lily and Forrest kind of opened the path to that, to a new world, a new species. I don't think it's a negative aspect, man. I think of it more like, think of Westworld. Everyone wanted to go to that afterlife for a reason, because they wanted to upload their consciousness into a world that wasn't predetermined for them, I guess. That's heaven. Heaven is choice, the ability to choose and make your own life. And that's why the multiverse is real, but it's only real inside the simulation. And that's why that is so important, because he said like hell is like right around the corner. If you open up a different dimension inside the simulation, then you're opening up a dimension inside a reality that's much darker, or a dark timeline, right? We talked about it in Back to the Future, where it's like, if we have a dark timeline, we could see maybe that's hell.
Right.
So I think it opened up the reality of that aspect to it. But I found it more fascinating than the aspect of species, right? The fact that humanity is controlled by the universal laws that we abide by, and the fact that Lily is a part of a new species now, of being inside the simulation, and she is kind of the first, right, the chosen one, almost like the Adam of this new species, with now her inside the simulation. It's not human anymore, and determinism doesn't apply anymore. It's multiverse theory that applies inside Deus, and the fact that she has that choice now. I thought it was interesting, because even Katie says it. She says she commits the first sin. The first sin was disobedience, and that's what broke us. That's what broke humanity. Adam was the one who introduced that crack in the system. He was kind of the first anomaly, so to say. And that's what Lily represents now inside Deus. So yeah, sorry guys. I know I'm kind of going crazy, but that's why it kind of blew my mind. I was like, oh, that's so fascinating and interesting.
Yeah. So my question is, do you think there's going to be a season 2, or are they just capping it off right here?
I was going to say, I hope not.
If I'm being honest, I don't think there will be, and I think it's for two reasons. And I know Sabrina's thinking of the first reason because I think Alex Garland thinks it's complete. But I also think the second reason is, sadly, I just don't think this show had the amount of viewers that it deserved. If I'm being honest, at least what I saw, it didn't look like people were so. I don't know. I just think people slept on a really interesting, thought-provoking, fascinating show, beautiful show. And I don't know if it had enough viewers.
Like, honestly, I am a fan of Alex Garland's work before this. I didn't hear about the show. The only reason I heard about it was from you, Andres. Like, genuinely. So this is something, if I didn't have you guys, it would have just flown right past me, and I'm happy I was able to check it out. But yeah, I keep telling everybody to watch it now. So hopefully it could gather some legs now that it's finished, and it finished on a good note. Because with a show like this, it's always kind of difficult. If there's a bad ending, it'll ruin the entire show, because then you built this entire thing up. But I really, really love this final episode. So hopefully with everybody kind of talking about it, and because I think a lot of people enjoyed it from what I've seen. Like,
okay.
Yeah, from what
I've read
seen,
a few that were pretty negative, so I was like, oh no.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow, I haven't. Damn.
Yeah.
So from what I think is that it's positive. So hopefully you could gather some legs in that sense. But yeah, I think Alex Garland is like the filmmaker and the storyteller, and this is something that he did so great at. And I don't think he would ever even want to make a season 2. I don't want to speak for him. Obviously, I'm not Alex Garland, but I think with something like this, it's like it's his work. It is complete. It finished itself out. It's well rounded. Why continue a story like this? Because I don't even want to see a season 2.
Yeah, obviously, before we head out, I want to say. Go ahead.
I do want to say that the reason I ask about season 2, or for one, to speak on the ratings and like the popularity of the show, this is a different experiment for FX. This is the first time that first time that FX has ever had an exclusively Hulu streaming show. So, it might have been like from a marketing perspective that it didn't do that well. It might have been from, the fact that, if Hulu would have just plastered this everywhere, it would have been a little bit of a different result. I think it probably holds out a little more popularity when it hits like the Emmy time or award season time, stuff like that. You're right. It's probably Alex Garland feels like this is a great ending. I personally, and, I do love this show, and I think this is my favorite Alex Garland thing. And I do think that this is, I really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, though, I do have the same criticism that I have for Ex Machina and for Annihilation, where I think that despite of it having like these really interesting concepts and really interesting ideas, it does end up kind of ending the same way that a lot of sci-fi movies do. It does have the same, we just talked about The Matrix. It does in the same way that the Matrix Revolutions does. It does in the same way that something like Minority Report does. It does in the same way that was another example. You brought up another example, Andres. I was like,
San Junipero.
San Junipero is the exact same way as San Junipero is. So unfortunately, I do feel like it does have that same kind of ending. It presents it from a little bit of a darker standpoint, and it does a little bit explain it. It does do a little less explaining, which less explaining to me is a good thing. I love that they don't really try and explain things and hammer things away to you like that.
They explain it visually.
They explain it visually, exactly, but they're not spoon feeding it through like dialogue or monologues or anything. So I do appreciate that. I do appreciate it on that level, and it does make it feel different. It stylistically feels different than anything else. Unfortunately, that's why I hope. I mean, if I were to hope for season 2, I would hope that they would explore the simulation world a little bit, and maybe an idea of like Lily trying to escape the simulation. Maybe she's not content with being. Towards the end of the show, she doesn't look like she's content with being in it. She looks like she's content with seeing Jamie again. She's content with.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I didn't get that at all. I almost saw it as like a different chance, a new life, this time with Jamie.
Yeah, totally. 100%. Like that's definitely like the second chance aspect of it. It gives it a little bit more of a hopeful feel. But I think in general, I mean, maybe it's just me, but I wouldn't want to be stuck in like somewhere where I know it's a simulation. I would like free will. I would like choice. I would like to abide by standards within the life I was born in. So for me, it presents itself as a little more darker, a little more apocalyptic as an ending. But at the same time, But I mean, at the same time, like, I guess for me as a storytelling, I guess I'll be a little more compelled to see like an escape from a simulation or something like that
Wow.
kind of diverges itself and distinguishes itself a little bit from even like Westworld. Westworld does have that kind of ending that's like, oh yeah, the robots are free now. Well, what's going to happen now? So I would kind of like to see something to that effect. But if this is just one season, it was a really good season, and if it's competing for the Emmy for best limited series, this year we're talking about like Watchmen and all these kind of things. I'll probably put Watchmen. Yeah. I'll probably put Watchmen over Devs for sure. But yeah, overall, I really enjoy what they did here.
I'm honestly fascinated by your take, man. I mean, did you get that feeling from San Junipero, or from the end of season 2 Westworld, where they all know they're in a sim, but they think of it as heaven? Because it's the same thing, but they're pretty happy about it.
Yeah. Well, San Junipero. I've read San Junipero. I've always read San Junipero as like a dark. It's definitely the most.
They play like heaven is a place on earth and like skip down the beach.
Yeah, I know, but that's it. And again, like I speak to like a more nihilistic perspective of like falling in line and just giving up your will and giving up your choice. It's less of a satisfying ending to me.
But I read it as like, what's the difference, right? Like, what's the difference between this reality and that reality? What's the difference between a Deus in the past and Deus in the present, or Deus in the future? We're still living out that same thing. It's the same reality we're living in right now, just because that reality has rules. I don't know. I didn't get that at all, but I'm so fascinated that you did. That's crazy. That's really cool. It's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't know if we're going to get a season 2, guys. I enjoyed it for what it was. Just visually, I was going to give a shout out to for Lyndon, for example. Like, Lyndon's story is heartbreaking, right? The fact that she convinced Lyndon to think that, oh, you have a chance if multiverse is real. And then it turns out like he falls every time, like every time. And I was like, wow, that's heartbreaking. That's a horror movie. And the fact that they show the shot of suspended in the sky, of falling back, and it implies that he fell every time, that he had no hope. It was, like you said, RB3, very nihilistic. That there was no multiverse and that he's stuck in the same loop.
Yeah, as opposed to someone like Forrest, who where we see the multiverse reality of like how his wife and kid would have not died in the car accident if the car accident just went a slightly different way. But it goes from showing the perspective of the creator, right? Like, and how the creator is using this technology to essentially get what he's been wanting the entire time, and not taking into consideration what anyone else's reality or future is going to be.
Absolutely. That's one takeaway that I was like, oh man, damn. Like, that's kind of a reach for this guy to become like the new God or new Jesus or whatever. I was like, I don't know if that's a good thing. But I want to end real quick on some quick shout outs of your guys' favorite characters, moments, lines, anything like that. I, for one, will start out by saying, I'm with my boy Sergey. Shout out to Sergey. That's my boy. I'm Team Russian Spy. Like, hell yeah, I'm Team Russian Spy. Like, dude, when that Russian was like, oh, you Americans, like, I was like, yeah, he's right. Like, Americans are the most self-righteous people there are. And I was so Team Russia at that point. I had like a little mini Russian flag. And when Homeless Man when he starts like counting in Russian, I was like, Russia.
Yeah.
Like, I never thought I'd be so pro-Russia ever, but this show made me so pro-Russia because I was like, America sucks, and we would like use that technology for evil. So yeah, shout out to my boy Sergey, my boy Jamie, simp for life, hashtag simp for life. I told you, bro, like, Devs is low-key like the biggest like simp horror story I've ever seen.
For sure.
Like, simping hard and getting murdered hard. I was like, yeah, man, that's what simping leads to, bro. So shout out to him. Sergey is my boy. And I thought Sonoya Mizuno was incredible. I know Nick Offerman's going to get all the hype, but she is so good. Anything that highlights for you guys?
Sonoya, she really shined towards the second half. For some reason, the first half of the series, I don't know why, I wasn't like, I wouldn't say the first half. It was like the first episode, something like that. I just didn't connect with her right away, but she really, really towards the second half, like got me in. She was great. Lyndon's entire storyline is just, yeah, like you said, that ending, but just even just throughout the entire thing is incredible. I love these supporting characters, how rich and well-rounded they are. That is something that stood out to me like immediately. And then of course, Jamie, as you said, simps. I love Jamie in the show. Again, another supporting character that I was so attached to immediately.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I loved. Obviously, I spoke about Jamie before. I loved him, and also big fan of Stewart, the older black dude who was working in devs.
Oh, he was good.
Yeah,
he's gonna be in Dune.
Yeah. He's getting everything. He was getting Fences with Denzel. For me, like every line he was just shooting was like hitting from the 3-point, like Steph Curry.
He's dropping bars, bro. He's like Morpheus in the Matrix.
Yeah, literally, like, and he was the only one who like stood up to Nick Offerman and was like, "No, bro, your theory's wrong. We have to do it this way. This is the only way this computer is going to work. It's not going to fit inside of your confined, brain space or whatever." I love like the little monologue he gave leading up to. I think it was. I think they said it was Shakespeare, but I don't think it was Shakespeare. I think it was like.
It wasn't Shakespeare. No, it was a poem. I forget what it is, but I looked it up. But it's not Shakespeare.
Yeah, but that was the hardest moment like ever when he was doing that little monologue thing. Everything he was saying, even to the part where when they were doing the flash, when they were first testing devs, and they were doing like the test simulation, watching like Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller. That whole thing was just really, really funny. Yeah, everything was still was like the highlight of the show for me.
Yeah, it really had a great cast.
Yeah, he was great. I've really only seen him in like Fences, Lady Bird, and Manchester by the Sea. Yeah. So those, especially Manchester by the Sea and Lady Bird, which are two that I've rewatched recently. He is so talented. He steals the show every single time he's on screen. He's so good. So I didn't know he was going to be in Dune, but I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a highlight reel of great performances.
Ken, the guy who played Kitten, I don't know exactly who that dude is.
Great.
Yeah, that dude was killing it too. Like,
bro. Yeah, everything. The fact that Kenton played the villain role, and the fact that everything came back to, it really was a fascinating show. And I'm with you, RB3, that if there is a season 2, I would like to go the political route. If I'm being real. What does this mean politically? Because they brought in that Russia thing and they kind of brushed over it. And I was like, oh, that's not cool. Because that was my favorite part, because I like the idea of this technology kind of being fought over in different world dominations type style. So we'll see if that happens. And again, I don't know if I upset anyone by my thoughts and theories and me going hard for Russia.
It's all everything's all just opinions and things like that.
Yeah,
it's all
are you fun. With me, RB3? Come on, are you Team Russia? At least in the show.
In the show. For sure.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
Sabrina.
I'm like a middle ground. I'm not Team Russia, but when the homeless man, I loved that entire.
That was a good push. That was a good one.
Yeah, that guy was committed to his role. I was like,
and then even afterwards, like at the end when she's walking out of her apartment with Sergey and she sees him and she just gives him that like look. I love that.
Yeah.
That's my boy Sergey, Russian spy for life. All right, guys.
I'm sorry. Just one more thing. I love how Lily was like, "Give me that phone. And you're like, "What do you want to see my phone?"
Like, I'm not a Russian spy.
Yeah, even better. He was like, "I'm not dirty, Mac. And what are you talking about?"
Sergey was, I don't know. I everything the Russian guy said in the second episode kind of ring true to me. He was like, "What? So what? If he was a spy, he still loved you. Like he still like." That I felt that. I was like, oh, that's kind of true. And the fact that America's doing the same thing, but they're more self-righteous about it. I was like, that's spot on. That's so true.
That's very true.
So again, guys, that's not my real life takeaway. It's my show takeaway. But either way, guys, that is our thoughts on devs. Obviously, we talked a lot. Let us know what you thought in the comments down below. What are your theories? What are your thoughts as far as what everything means? And obviously, make sure you guys follow us at First Cut TMO on social media and subscribe to First Cut if you haven't done so already. Where can everyone find you? I'm going to start with you, RB3.
Find me on Twitter, Instagram at Director RB3.
Sabrina.
Twitter and Instagram at Sabrina X Monica.
And I'm at Squad Leader Race. Make sure you guys check out those tweets for each of us. We all have different thoughts and takes. And for the First Cut crew, I'm Andres.
It's RB3.
I'm Sabrina.
And we're peacing out. Peace out, guys.
Taking everything from me.
I can't take what you never had.